I'm Jodi Kantor. I'm a journalist at the New York Times, but that is not actually why I'm here. I'm here for a reason I think we never could have foreseen. I'm here with one of the most special people in my life, my rabbi and friend, Rabbi Rachel Timoner, and her sister, Ondi Timoner. And I think we're here for a reason that none of us could have really foretold, which is that, Ondi, you've made this exquisite film, Last Flight Home, about your father's death. And it's a portrait of your family, it's a portrait of your father, and it asks the big questions that all of us face about how to let go, how we can resolve the biggest questions in our lives, whether it's actually okay to embrace death, how it changes us. And I really want people to experience this documentary for themselves because I know it had a very profound effect on me. But I do have some questions for you, things I think we actually have not discussed about the film and how it was made. You know, I think my biggest one is that, you can tell me if this is just me, but I did not find this film depressing. I just didn't. The death of your father is obviously very sad. I'm so sorry to both of you for it. But watching the film was not a downer for me. It was the kind of movie that on the one hand is a weepy, but on the other hand made me feel, it was very consoling. It was very comforting. Did you feel that in making it? Are other people saying that to you? What do you think is the paradox there of how, on the one hand, the material can be genuinely difficult, and yet the film can actually be quite comforting?
We definitely have been hearing that from all audiences, is that people are actually uplifted by this film of watching our father die, which is surprising. One reason I know is because he's hilarious. And so you're laughing throughout the whole thing. We had a screening recently at our congregation, and the room was filled with laughter. And also because he imparts so much wisdom to everyone who comes to say goodbye, that you're kind of gathering up all these ideas about how to live. So it's about how to die, but it's even more, it's about how to live. And also, I would say the last reason or idea I have about why is because there's so much love in that room. I think people feel like they get to kind of be inside that love also, and I think it fills them up.
So for me, it flowed through me as an editor, really like no other film I've made. It was so instinctual, and it was so beautiful to laugh and cry with Dad and with my family, and to be able to experience it with the objective eye of the camera. I was able to grieve with a dimension I don't think many people get to experience. Dad was alive inside the Avid. I had not intended to make a film at first. I was just trying to bottle him up. But when I saw the footage, I sat down to do a memorial video that Rachel asked me to make a short video. I don't think I would have opened the footage, certainly at that point, 2 weeks after his death, had Rachel not asked. I couldn't stop editing. It was just, people came in there grappling, as you said, with the greatest issues in their lives about life, death, how to love, how to live, their own shame they were carrying. Dad comforted them. Dad made them laugh. He tried to warm their hands. He tried to warm Benji's hands on the day of his death. Like, he was just this presence that was, they left change. So as a filmmaker, it was like there was an arc to everyone who came in there where they were comforted. And I think in turn the audience is comforted. And then meanwhile, Dad, is also having to go through lightening his own load of what he's been carrying before he moves on. And that was so profound, what Rachel did and what happened there with the vidui and the deathbed confessional, that I was just like, we have to share this. I know this is raw and personal and hard, but this, I think, could help a lot of people.
And Ondi, you've said that your goal in this film is for the viewer to feel like a member of your family, to create that intimacy, for them to almost feel like they're losing a loved one. I certainly felt that when I watched the film. Will you talk about the choices that you made, even perhaps inadvertently, to make that happen? Because all three of us are storytellers, and I think we know that things don't just happen in stories. Even when they appear very natural, to produce something that powerful, you make choices that lead the audience in that direction. What choices do you think you made either in the filming or the editing that created that feeling of familial closeness with the viewer?
So my process of filmmaking overall has always been to try to take the audience on the journey with me, to recreate sort of the serendipity of life as I've experienced it. And I wasn't, as I said, I wasn't intending to make a film, but when Dad was calling from the hospital and begging us all to die, it was shocking because he was the most tenacious person we knew, and he was promising he'd be there forever, and we kind of believed him, you know? And we went on this Zoom call as a family. And I think establishing the family right there and seeing everyone and meeting everyone in the beginning in that way, as we're trying to process this and trying to support our beloved father, was definitely the place to start. But really a turning point in the film is when Rachel talks to Dad, and Dad tells her that he's gotten to choose a date to die. And this agency that he had, it's like a turning point in the film. It's like 12 minutes in or something. And it's very important. I tried to create a feeling of really desperation in the beginning, and you feeling like there's a helpless elderly man that you don't quite know, and he really wants to die, and the family's sort of struggling. And then his spirit turns because he has this basic human right that we discovered, this End of Life Option Act in California that gave him agency after 40 years of being powerless as a hemiplegic, paralyzed man. And he gets on the phone with Rachel on the Zoom, and he starts talking about Donald Trump and what he would like to do to Donald Trump. And I think for the audience, it's a turning point where they realize that this man is hilarious, as Rachel said, and that he's feisty and spirited and sharp, and that it's going to be quite a ride. And then overall, I tried to shape the arcs of each of the main characters. It's weird to say it like that, but Rachel balancing being a daughter and a rabbi, you know, David, our brother, who since Dad's stroke, he was only like 7 or 8, has just really had a hard time expressing emotion, and has had, as he says, has not cried really, except in a Pixar movie. And you see him really face feelings of vertigo and go through this, and then ultimately cry. And then Mom, I mean, I don't want to give the whole movie away, but you know, Mom, the journey we went on was so profound because Mom was in this state of denial, and Dad was carrying so much shame that we didn't even necessarily know about, because he was such a generous and gracious person that he never really told us that. So we had really real family problems that we were trying to solve. And Rachel came about 5 days before Dad's death, and I had been there, you know, as an independent filmmaker, able to clear my calendar and just be the quarterback of his care, and dealing with Mom and Dad, and the fact that Mom wasn't facing Dad's death, and Dad was dying to spend time with her. You know, it was like, thank God, when Rachel showed up, and I'm really happy my partner Morgan filmed me in bed, excited talking to Rachel, because it was like special forces coming in, you know? But yeah, I mean, setting up the Zoom calls was to try to get Dad to realize that he wasn't a failure, that he'd given us everything.
Well, I want to ask you about that. So one of the most stunning moments of the film is when your father makes this confession that he feels he's let the family down financially because he had made a lot of money as the founder of an airline, and he feels that he I don't know what the right word is. No, he didn't squander it exactly. He failed. He failed.
Lost it all.
Exactly. Had you known that he felt that way, or did that come as a surprise to you?
I mean, I think that I would say for myself, I intuited to some degree that I remember after the stroke, the ways that he would express frustration, like clearly he was so diminished and so defeated. And we watched him shrink. And also, I did not totally know that at the end of his life, he was carrying this massive burden of shame, and that by just speaking it, he could put it down. And that, I mean, am I giving away the whole movie? I mean,
No.
that is I mean, that was the miracle that we experienced, and now it's in a film. But like, he was able to release his shame in the days before he died and die a lighter, freer, more self-loving human being, and that was amazing.
So let me ask you another question about your dad. Do you think your dad knows this film was made?
Yes.
Why do you say that?
I feel him. I feel like he's here.
Ondi.
I think so too. I do. I have less of a solid, but I believe we should give him the benefit of the doubt. He was so sure he was going to be watching over us. And yeah, there's times that I've felt him too. And now he's coming to people who watch it in their dreams. And I just feel like he's alive in so many ways right now.
I do too, but for a different reason as a viewer. I mean, it's an interesting question because the movie is about your dad's agency and him choosing to die. So the question of whether he knows that this is going to be a film or not is a very interesting one. When I watched the film, I felt he was aware and accepting of the cameras. And I'm going to give you a hypothesis. Ondi, you're the director. I don't want to take away control from you. I feel he was showing the two of you off in this film. Does that strike a chord with you?
I will say a couple of things that are very, first of all, you're very good at what you do. So let's establish that right now. But okay, so when I was facing this like urge that was, I felt inappropriate. I even went to see a therapist because I was so worried about why am I trying to set up cameras, I had written a script about Dad. I had no intention of making a doc. We didn't have any archival footage. So I wasn't making a documentary, but I had to film. And I was worried about Rachel because she's not a big fan of cameras. And I didn't want to mediate my family's experience. So therapist, I thought, would say it was terribly inappropriate. She said, actually, if you think you should film, you should film. I called my father, our father, and I asked him, and he said, I instinctively know you're on the right track, which was such a strange answer because it was consent for sure, but it was also like, what track was I on, But he seemed to know what track I was on. And then another thing that he said during just a quiet time with me was that he just wanted to, I kept assuring him, as you see in the movie, and Rachel kind of tells me, here's the exercise and gets me to simmer down, but I'm trying to tell him, you've given us everything and we're fine, and Rachel's a rabbi and I'm a filmmaker and David's an editor, and you can go and take another body, And he keeps saying, no, I don't want total freedom. I want to watch over you. He said, I want life to be easier for you. And I said, it's fine. We're fine, And he said, I just don't want anyone to ever question what a great filmmaker you are again.
And he was pushing you into your rabbi role. You were, to some extent, just trying to be his daughter, and he kept calling you rabbi in the film. And to me, he was sort of like, I want the camera to see what a powerful rabbi you are. Okay, last question.
That's wild.
Will you said something so interesting in your director's statement, which is that these days, losing your dad, knowing he was going to die, knowing he was going to take this powerful medicine that was going to end his life, actually ended up being some of the greatest days of your life. Will you each just speak a tiny bit to that as a kind of closing note here?
Sure. So I had no idea that there would be this much Judaism in the film, first of all, because Dad wasn't very religious. And so it was not, Rachel became a rabbi, had a calling, but it was after she'd flown the coop, it was not like, but Dad, I feel like the veil lifted, and this answers your question. It's like, as we approach the end of our lives, really what's most important comes to the surface. And he could see his family. He was sure he'd be watching over us in a way that he wasn't. When I flash back 6 months ago, he thought there would be nothing afterwards. So it was the most beautiful and sacred space I've ever inhabited. He turned more towards Judaism because he was raised in Judaism. Rachel being a rabbi was the greatest gift that could happen for our family. And I really recommend it. If you have a rabbi in the family, it's it's a good way to go, because she brought in, and she's so special, she brought in these rituals that, like washing Dad's body, or describing tucking him in with the dirt, or, the songs she sang to him for days when she came. And my son has since said to me how much that helped, So it was just pure presence in that room. It was a time where everything to do with, our trappings of success or life, the mundanities, none of that. It was just like being in spirit in that room. And I feel like the camera somehow captured that, which was just a miracle to me.
Well, on that note, thank you for making this film. Rachel, thank you for participating in it. I'm going to treasure the memories of seeing this movie. I feel like it might carry me through some tough losses of my own. I hope this is just a period of pride for you in reflecting on what you've created.
Thank you so much.
Jodi, thank you.
Thank you.